So the business that I run now, it's actually my fourth venture, if you will, but it's called Northstar Venture Partners. And the inspiration behind it was that with my last three businesses, I was able to sell two of them. I was really lucky. The third one, I wasn't able to sell. Unfortunately, it failed on us. And part of the reason why it failed was because I and my team of entrepreneurs that I was working with, it was an early stage tech company, really didn't understand everything that was going on the finance side. So we didn't understand what was going on with the venture capital piece of our business. We really didn't understand what was going on with the fundraising piece of our business. And so that kind of led into, after that failure and taking some time off and saying, okay, what do I want to do next in my career? It was, how can I change, how can I revolutionize, if you will, kind of this world of finance, that entrepreneurs have better access to the capital that they need and they don't get hurt by it, but it actually helps them. So that's the long version of the inspiration behind it. How I got started in finance would have been in my startups, in the last three startups, because I was actually fundraising. So when you're fundraising as an entrepreneur, you start to learn kind of the ropes a little bit, but you never get access to kind of like the backdoor meetings. You never get to see what's going on, behind the scenes. So with finance, luckily I was able to go back to school. I got an MBA. I specialized in finance, amongst other things. And once I had an understanding of what was going on, I started to kind of reanalyze everything that happened in my last business as it related to venture capital and finance. So that was kind of my first inroad, and luckily I grew up around the banking industry, families in the banking industry, so I knew a good bit about it, and I've partnered with people with Northstar for the duration of the last 2-3 years that we've been around, and that's kind of given us a lot of the insight and information that we need to really accurately do what we do in the world of finance. But yeah, I mean, Northstar Venture Partners is kind of the first big finance firm that I've ever run. Absolutely. That's actually part of the big motivation for why we run Northstar the way that we do. We don't call ourselves a VC, we don't call ourselves an accelerator, and we don't call ourselves an investment bank. We're kind of this hybrid model. And so what our job is, what our goal is with every client that we have, is to let the entrepreneurs run their business day to day and give them a very short window of time that they have to actually pitch and not be actively running in that business, because right now, the way the process works, the way the venture capitalists want it to work, is that it takes anywhere from 3 to 9 months for you to just be an actively fundraising CEO. Which means that you're really not running your company during that time, which doesn't make sense for an early stage venture. 3 to 9 months is a long time. But again, the venture capitalists have figured out that this is a really good way to kind of, kind of like Shark Tank. It's kind of a way to get you so worked up and kind of so worn out that you'll take any deal that they slide across the table. So they get much more favorable terms, they give you less money for more equity, and you kind of just need to take it because you're at the end of your rope. And we don't think that's fair. Well, I mean, the truth is it's daunting, right? I mean, financing anything, whether it's a home, whether it's purchasing a car, I mean, it comes with nerves, right? Everybody's nervous about debt. So I think the first kind of fear is debt, right? Then on top of that, what you have is you have this whole mysterious world of equity, right? And well, how do I raise equity capital, right? And so everybody thinks it's the same story as Airbnb. Everybody thinks it's the same story as Snapchat. Everybody thinks it's the same story as Facebook. Right? But these aren't Stanford alums in San Francisco that have access to that kind of capital. And the truth is, it's not kind of a cookie cutter model. Those are the anomalies, those companies that were able to fundraise like that. But what the entrepreneurs do, because we don't have a roadmap, we don't have a playbook for fundraising, is we follow that model. So we oftentimes just end up raising a bunch of capital, not necessarily because we need it or even know what to do with it, but because it's what we're supposed to do. Right? And so you have this whole kind of confusion where there's the fear of debt, and there's this confusion with equity, but there's way less fear of the equity because it's not seen as, oh, I have to make a payment. But really, the equity could be just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than the debt for the company. Because the debt itself is a nominal amount that has to be paid back, right? It has terms on it. Equity comes with partners. Equity comes with human capital. So equity comes with people that can control your business. Equity comes with people that can push you out of your business, which is what happened to me. Equity is basically every horror story you've heard in Silicon Valley of a founder getting pushed out, even going all the way back to like a Steve Jobs where he was pushed out of his company. It's, it's from equity partners. It's from people that come in because they have board seats and they start to have control. So equity is way riskier because debt, you have a debt service payment, and if you can't make the payment, they can foreclose on you, whatever. Equity, it could be years down the line before it screws you, but you could walk away with next to nothing from the company that you started and controlled by a whole bunch of people that you didn't even want on board in the first place. And that's a simple answer, but the fact of the matter is that today, in 2019, what we're seeing with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the tech entrepreneurs, the ones that it's kind of their first time around the block, they look at equity and they look at fundraising as like this stamp of approval, right? So they're like, oh, well, we just raised a Series A. And you hear it like they're bragging about it, which if anything, you should be a little bit more worried about it because that's somebody else's money. I don't remember, at least 10 years ago or so when I first started fundraising, I don't remember it being like that. You were always a little bit worried when you took on equity because now you had partners, now you had to do some kind of reporting for them, you had responsibilities to them. Now it's like encouraged and it's a stamp of approval, which is silly because we still see the failure rate of startups at over 90%. Right? So insanity is the definition of doing something over and over again and not getting a different result. But we use this equity capital today because we're in the longest booming economy in United States history, have more free-flowing money in the world of venture capital than ever before. We use this money like a play toy, right? We raise it, we get really nice offices, we hire 10 people that we don't need, we buy everybody an iMac, we put in beds so people can take a nap half the day, we buy ping pong tables, we buy all this junk, right? What's the point? Because the fact of the matter is this equity itself, like we said before, could be explosive. You have partners. Why would you raise an extra $100,000 just so you could have ping pong tables in your office? It's just $100,000 more human capital of people that you have to deal with, right? And so the answer is, when do you finance? When do you fundraise? When you absolutely need to. When you see something on your books or when you see in your business plan, hey, this year we're going to do $300,000, but if we had an extra $85,000 in capital, we could do $500,000, or if we had an extra $200,000, we could do almost $1 million this year. Then it starts to make sense to raise because you start looking at it and there's real return on that investment. It's not just to buy ping pong tables and napping, offices for the for the employees. I always tell our clients, because part of what we do at Northstar Venture Partners is we brand ourselves as we grow, finance, and sell companies, right? And so in the growth stage, what that means is we look for early stage strategies for these companies for how they can not only grow internally and with their customers and all that, but how can they grow on the finance side without having to actually raise any outside capital. So always the best way to finance a business is to self-fund it, right? If you can finance it through sales, you have next to no risk. Right? There's an old adage, and I think Mark Cuban is the one that says it all the time, that sales cures all. And it's the truth, because if you have sales and you can't keep up, that's fine. You can hire more people. So today what we see is we don't see anybody really caring about sales. They care about daily average users, or they care about number of people on the platform. But that's a little silly when you consider the fact that a business needs sales in order for it to grow, indefinitely. That being said, with a tech startup, what happens is they've kind of flipped the model on its head, and they say, we don't care about revenue, we don't care about profit, we just care about how many people you have using your service, because we want it to be so big that nobody else can compete with you. And that's thanks in large part to SoftBank, which we'll see one day kind of what SoftBank, how they perform with the way that they invest in companies. But regardless, it's not really a healthy or safe business model to just finance a company like the way we see tech startups being financed, because although you can have these massively successful companies like a Spotify, a Snapchat, a Lyft, an Uber, whatever it is, more often than not, what you see is a graveyard of companies filled that couldn't raise past the Series A or past the Series B, and for no reason other than they just had too much money that they had raised that they couldn't pay back, or that they couldn't ever hit the metrics that they had to meet to raise more capital, failing and dying, not because they didn't have a good software, a good company, but that, and that kills jobs too. That hurts a lot of people. So with any kind of financing, you have to look at all your terms. The number one thing is, and I don't know why, but so many entrepreneurs just tend to skip on legal. For some reason, we don't skip on other things today. We spend thousands of dollars on websites, thousands of dollars on logos, on company polos, for crying out loud. But a lawyer billing out at $150 or $200 an hour, oh no, I can't afford that. And that's the silliest thing that you can do when you're doing a fundraise. And we see so many entrepreneurs that, this might sound like a lot, but it's not. Even at raising $100,000, for example, which isn't a lot in the world of tech startups, it's a lot to some people. But even raising $100,000, you see people say, oh, well, I can just do it on my own. And that's foolish, because what ends up happening is you end up getting a term sheet, whether it's debt or equity, and that term sheet has stuff in there that if you don't know what you're reading, if you don't know what you're looking at, could be detrimental to your business, because they can literally take over your company and push you out if you don't meet certain requirements. So what we always say is, it's great to go and find the investors. That's step one. But step two, before you close the deal, which is step 3, finalizing it, is getting that legal advice. Because without that, you could be in big trouble. That's a good question. So we get asked about pitch decks all the time because that's the number one service, I guess, that we provide for our clients is these pitch decks that convert. With pitch decks and with pitching, we always tell clients you want your pitch deck to be anywhere from 12 to 20 slides long, really, unless you're in biotech or something that has just a lot of, industry jargon that you have to explain or case studies, whatever. It should be 12 to 20 slides long. And part of that reasoning is because you're really only going to have about a 12 to 20 minute attention span of these investors. Even if they're setting you an hour meeting, it's anticipated that the majority of that meeting is going to be Q&A. They're going to want to ask a lot of questions about you, about your business, whatever it is. So you really don't want to waste their time with this hour-long pitch because they don't care. And just human nature, they won't have the attention span to pay attention to it. So the second part of that question, kind of how do you hook them, right? Considering you have a 12 to 20 slide deck, 12 to 20 minutes to pitch these people, is what we always do before kind of the standard deck, which is title slide, problem, solution, why we're different, financials. Before that problem slide, just after the title slide, we put in what we call a hook slide. And that hook slide is some kind of jaw-dropping statistic. Right? So for example, if I'm creating an app to help people eat better, I could put in some statistic like this year alone, 678,000 Americans will be diagnosed with diabetes purely from unhealthy eating. Right there, that's a hook statement. Now people are paying attention. They're going, what is this company doing? Now I'm intrigued. So using little kind of tricks like that throughout your deck to where you have these jaw-dropping either metrics or statistics or statements that anybody on planet Earth would have to pay attention to is a really good way to just keep that interest when you're in the meeting. It's a great question. So with Northstar Venture Partners, like I said before, we're really, if anything, we skew towards more of an investment bank, which doesn't exist for entrepreneurs today. Investment banks, there's a lot of mystery and confusion behind them, just like VC. And this is stuff I didn't know when I was on the entrepreneurship side of things. An investment bank is basically just a big consulting firm. And they have different products and services and offerings that they offer in any mix of deliverables or build hours. And so Northstar, if anything, skews towards being defined as an investment bank, but we also kind of cross or intersect, if you will, with accelerators and venture capital firms too, because what we're the intermediary. So we're the group, we're the entity that connects entrepreneurs to the capital that they need to keep growing. But we connect them not only to the right providers, but with the right strategy. And that's a service that has never existed before for entrepreneurs because typically it's been, they go straight to the venture capitalists and they have to deal with them. They have to figure out where to get that money from, or they go straight to the bank to try and get a loan there. They don't have anybody big companies have intermediaries all the time. Investment banks are some of the biggest businesses in the world because almost every major corporation needs an investment bank at some point to do one of 3 things: grow, finance, or sell. And that's what we offer, but more for the early stage entrepreneurs, which is a new business model. That's a good question too. So, I think with every entrepreneur, especially the ones that they kind of have the bug, like we call it, right? Where they're stuck doing it. They don't know any other way of life. They can work for somebody else, certainly, but they're going to be an entrepreneur for life, right? Like that's just who they are. It's not even their career, it's who they are as a person. For those types of people, no matter what their kind of life looks like, they're going to own multiple businesses in that, in that lifespan. Each business you have, although you can draw similarities from and you can learn lessons from each one, is incredibly different. And you meet incredibly different people. You have incredibly different experiences. You have incredibly different products and clients and services that you interface in. So it's almost like with each building block, you kind of get closer to this end goal that's almost non-existent, that you don't know what it is, but it always kind of leads into the next business somehow. Right? And it's strange because you wouldn't think about that. Like when the last one failed on us, it's like, man, why did that happen? That hurts so bad, right? Why couldn't that one just be successful? But without that knowledge, without that information of what happens when you have to shut down a company like that and understanding how things went wrong on the fundraising and financing side, all of a sudden with this venture, it's very easy to see the mistakes that a potential client could make, right? So we wouldn't be able to, our firm probably wouldn't even exist if myself and the partners that we have at the firm didn't have those experiences. So Florida, I guess, at first was just kind of by accident. UCF alumni, go Knights. And so being at the University of Central Florida, they have a great program now through the Blackstone Launchpad to help a lot of entrepreneurs. But at the time that I was there, we had something known as the UCF Incubator Program. And the Incubator Program was great because it provided subsidized office space, access to different business services, lawyers, legal providers, consultants, bankers, all that kind of stuff, things that an early stage company needs. And so being a part of that incubator kind of gave us this unfair advantage, which is what you always look for as a young company, to get ahead of our competition. So with that, I just kind of stayed in the program, and as I stayed in the program after I graduated and all that, I started to realize that Florida was really growing in terms of not just as a state and an economy, but growing in terms of their tech entrepreneurs and how many people wanted to do business out of here, specifically because of things like taxes, low cost of living, access to talent, big universities, major airports. I mean, Florida's kind of like it's the gem of the U.S. if you're a tech entrepreneur, because nobody can afford to live in San Francisco or New York these days. Especially if you're starting up a company and you're moving employees there, you're going to make them go bankrupt in their first, year or two of living there. Florida, you have this unbelievable environment where not only do we have wonderful weather and access to things like resorts and hotels and beaches, but we have this phenomenal economic advantage when it comes to getting a company off the ground. Because you can always grow. You can always open up a second office or a third office in San Francisco and a WeWork or in New York when you have to. You can even have a virtual presence there. But in terms of having headquarter operations, I mean, I don't know if there's anywhere as good as Florida right now. Honestly, probably the most exciting, the most nerve-wracking part is that you're learning something every single day. Right? I think it's naive when you hear a business owner at any stage say that they know everything about their industry, or say that they know everything about what they're doing, because it's just a lie. It's a marketing lie to try and get you to buy their services. None of us know everything. No business owner knows everything. And I think being vulnerable like that actually allows you to kind of have this open-mindedness to learn more from people that you may not have considered learning from before, and to really deliver a lot more value to your clients, because you're seeing things in a different light. You're perceiving information in this different way because you're open-minded and understanding that, not everybody that I learn from, or every experience that I'm going to, encounter is going to be directly related to my business, but I can draw something from it. Right? And so I think that's probably the most exciting part, is that you're consistently learning and evolving and changing. And that's how you provide a better service to your clients, So over the next year, this is actually a big year for us. This is the first year that we've taken on clients outside of kind of our core services, our core investment banking services for a while. And we've made all of our services accessible to early stage entrepreneurs. So anybody raising up to a Series A, which is about $5 million before, we didn't really have access. We didn't really have a way to interface with them. And now we have a whole new set of offerings and packages and services that we can provide to those entrepreneurs. And so for us, that's kind of the goal this year, is to make sure that we establish ourselves as kind of a major name, a major player when it comes to helping any entrepreneur at any stage get their business from point A to point B, whatever point A and B are, in terms of growing, financing, or selling that company. And finally, for the first time, being able to connect with them in a way that makes sense, because the challenge has always been economical. It's been, how do we provide a service that pays us what we need to be paid to actually make this worth our time, but also is affordable, because we know the challenges of being an early stage entrepreneur. And so we finally hit that intersection, and that's really what the goal of this year is to establish ourselves amongst the early stage entrepreneurs as a name and a player that can help them get to where they want to go. Been doing that for a while with all the companies, and I'll tell you why. So first of all, it feels really good, right? When you have a company and you can give back, but it's also very beneficial. And I feel like a lot of people won't bring that up, but the fact of the matter is regardless of kind of what community you're in, wherever you're at, whatever country, whatever state, whatever city, even if you don't think so, if your business is mostly virtual or whatever, getting support from the local community doesn't just help the business grow, it doesn't just help get the word out there, it kind of helps with morale. It helps with employee morale. It helps with your own kind of emotional support that you need as an entrepreneur when, everybody knows you don't always have great days. I mean, most of them, in all honesty, as an entrepreneur, are pretty bad. I mean, you're trying to not go broke. You're trying to keep the company in business. You're trying to pay people. You're trying to make payroll. So when you have the support of the local community, the strange thing that happens is kind of people will extend their hand when you need help, right? Instead of just being closed off in this little room and working on your online business, they'll say, oh, you need some help here, I'll help you with this, right? Maybe the local banker, the lawyer, the doctor, whatever it is, will extend something to you just because they know you've gotten out there. So how do we give back? I mean, we've done it in a number of ways over the years. With my first company, I was really lucky to be the first student at UCF to donate back a scholarship to my school, which was the Rosen School of Hospitality Management, to help another student basically chase their entrepreneurial ventures. So we gave a grant for that scholarship. With my company after that, we would do a lot of local events, and I think that was probably the most fun, was the local events, because instead of just giving money, you're still kind of giving money, but you're giving time. And you're getting the employees and the community to connect, and you kind of have this weird synergy of people are really excited about what you're doing. And somehow, even though you're doing something that's charitable, you're getting all these connections. You get new clients out of it. It's the strangest thing. So you could look at it as pure charity, but in all honesty, there's a huge marketing aspect behind it too. Not that that's necessarily the number one motivation, but it's something for entrepreneurs to consider. And then I think really the big piece with the last company that we did, and still we do now, is we do a lot of shadowing, where we kind of let earlier stage entrepreneurs, we let people that may not have as much access, whether because of their economical situation or upbringing or whatever, to the business world, and they have their own dreams, they have their own passions, and we kind of bring them on and we say, hey, you can come work here with us, you can use our office, we can train you on this, we can help you on this, and they end up helping us out as interns. So we kind of have this shadowing intern kind of thing going on, which is new for us, and again, it has its monetary cost, but it's working out really good because we actually hired one person out of that, and we'll see. I mean, but there's a whole bunch of ways you can get creative with it. Even if your business doesn't have all that much money, there's always plenty of ways to give time. Today, believe it or not, I mean, there's the obvious kind of stuff you do outside of work, right? Try and spend time with family. I happen to like cars. That's one thing I try and spend my time on. I like a lot of movies. I like to read. So, there's those kinds of things. But hobbies in general, like I was saying before with entrepreneurship, it's weird because, in finance and entrepreneurship, I'm using the same because I'm just a finance entrepreneur now. But, it's weird because you kind of, if you're really doing it purely and you're doing it for the right reasons and it's in your blood, it's kind of your life. Right? It's kind of like the whole myth of the workday, or, even still this work-life balance, which I know so many people are going to hate that I just said that, but, that work-life balance thing, as far as I'm concerned, is a myth until you've really made it and society accepts you as an entrepreneur and you get your paycheck. Because up until then, I mean, you've signed your life to this business if you're doing it the right way. If you're doing it because you want to make sure you can make payroll, if you're doing it because you want to make sure you can grow, if you're doing it because you want to make sure you can provide your shareholders return, right? At least for the first 3-5 years, sometimes even more than that. We were just talking about another entrepreneur that's 10 years in and he's finally hitting his stride. But, it becomes your life. Your work becomes your life and your life becomes your work. And, so the whole hobbies question, like I said, I try because I know it's healthy to get away from work every now and then. And you have to do that. But the fact of the matter is, if you're chasing a dream and it's really a dream, right? The difference, it's really a dream. Right? So, for example, if you're a child and you wanted to be an astronaut, right? Or you wanted to be an athlete or whatever it is, right? And that's the same dream that you had. For me, it was to be an entrepreneur. If it's a real, pure dream, you will never, ever feel like you're working. You'll love it and you'll want to do it every day. If it's kind of a society manufactured dream where it's like, oh, well, I want to be a blank engineer because that's kind of the path school pushed you in, that's a different story. That could be a dream, but it's probably still going to be a 9-to-5, maybe some overtime dream. It's not that pure dream. And so what I'm talking about is when you have that pure dream, it's your hobby, it's your life, it's your business, it's your work, it's everything to you, and you don't even look at it that way. It's fun, So that's what I do. I build this business. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess as an entrepreneur and anything else that I'd like to share about what we do, it's that, when it comes to starting a business, right? When it comes to any of the businesses that I've started, when it comes to any of the businesses that I've run, and even to the one that I'm currently running. I think anything that you do, in terms of building a business has to be rooted somewhere, somewhat, in a sense of passion. You have to really love it because you're going to have to endure it, right? And I say endure it because you're not going to build it. You're going to have to endure it if you want to build it, right? And I think that, that's one thing that I want more people, I think, to know about us as a company, and probably even just about me as an entrepreneur, is that, there's not all this glitz and glamour behind it. There's no secret, there's no shortcut. It's a lot of hard work. And again, just like we were saying in a previous conversation, it's not all about the image, right? Sometimes it's just about getting the job done and getting to the next stage, getting to the next step. And I think sometimes what that requires is not posting on Instagram every 2 minutes, but actually putting your nose down and getting stuff done. And that's what we do, right? That's what Northstar is designed to do. It's not designed to be this next big VC firm. It's not designed to be the next Y Combinator. It's none of that. It's designed to say, hey, there's real diehard entrepreneurs out there that are getting underserved by this venture capital community because they're really vultures and they're just going after very certain specific types of entrepreneurs with certain kinds of businesses. And there's a whole bunch of these entrepreneurs that don't have the help that they need, especially on the finance side, to get to the next stage. And I think that's what I want people to really know about us at Northstar Venture Partners, is that we're here to help you endure that journey, right? We're here to help guide you to success. Anybody that promises you success, anybody that promises you that it's going to work out is a liar, right? But we're here to help you. That's why we have the term partners in our name, is because we're going to partner with you to get you to where you want to be with your venture. And I guess that kind of translates to me too, is I want people to know, especially if I have friends or anything that watch this, that, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you disappear for a little bit. You have to rebuild. Sometimes you have to kind of go into that dark mode and just say, hey, I got to get away from everything and everybody, because there's a lot of creativity that has to happen when you're starting a business, and you can't have any of that negative energy around you when you need that creativity. So you kind of have to, rebuild. And I want, more people to accept, especially any friends and family that are close to entrepreneurs, to accept the fact that we're okay, we're doing just fine, but we need our time to rebuild these businesses. And unfortunately, we don't lead a career where you work 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, and you get to your next stage by doing good for your boss for 3 years. We don't get that. We get successes and failures. And sometimes after a failure, you have to rebuild, right? And a rebuild is never kind of a pretty process, but it's part of being an entrepreneur. It's part of that tough road. It's part of that endurance. And I think I want, more people to know that, again, not just for the firm, for Northstar, but for me too, is that, it takes grit. It takes tenacity, right? And to never forget that as an entrepreneur, because it's not Instagram posts.